When people talk about the American dream, they always mention a white picket fence. It's a symbol for private property, the nice big house that it surrounds like a moat. Homeownership might be the most important part of the American dream. It's a very big part of it. It's proof that you've made it and that you worked your ass off to get there. It's proof that in America, you are the architect of your own destiny, that you can change your lot in life, no matter who you are or where you're from. Homeownership allows people to build something. It's about owning a tiny patch of America. But the American dream seems to be dying right before our eyes. There is a great meme that goes around all the time. It's maybe my favorite meme, and it's a bunch of boomers doing a cute line dance that says, boomers selling their house for $2 million after buying it in 1969 for 7 raspberries. We'll play it for you. If you got 16, you can get a blizzard. I'm choking on this so sweet and sipping on this scissor. This is one of my favorite memes because in a simple, digestible, hilarious moment, it manages to distill so much of the housing crisis we face as a nation, which is what we'll be talking about tonight with my guest, Carol Roth, the brilliant Carol Roth. This is Real America with me, Bridget Phetasy. All right, let's get into it. Owning a home has never been less affordable. The cost of a median priced house eats up 34% of the average wage, which is way above the safe limit. 3 out of 4 households can't afford a median priced home at all. In some places, it costs half a person's income just to keep a roof over their head. Then, if you can even buy a house, you realize that mortgages have nearly doubled in the past decade, and that's before the extras. So many hidden costs like maintenance, taxes, and repairs add up to $21,000 a year. Most homeowners had no idea it was that high. Young Americans see this and feel locked out. Almost a third of millennials and nearly 40% of Gen Z believe they'll never own a home. In 1981, the median homeowner age was 31, and now the median homebuyer age is 56, which is an insane statistic. The cost of living is also insane. And I say that as a 46-year-old adult trying to manage it all. I can't imagine trying to get ahead if I were a young adult, saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. The reason I dropped out of college, by the way. I have a lot of empathy for young folks feeling frustrated and turning to socialists like Mamdani in New York. Everything is more expensive while menial jobs are being taken over by AI and robots, and the dollar continues to be devalued. Cars are so much more expensive than they were when I was younger. Insurance is insane for literally everything. Healthcare feels completely broken. Groceries still haven't come down, and utilities like water and electric continue to go up. You need 6 figures to get into a house near most cities where one could find a job. I entered the job market with basically nothing. I worked as a yoga instructor and a waitress and dozens of other odd jobs for most of my life until I finally started getting paid to write. I never had a job that gave me health insurance. I always paid for it privately. I rented until I was 44 years old. It actually never even occurred to me that homeownership was something that was I desired, but also that's something that was in my future potentially until I had a career, met my husband, and had a child, all of which I was a very late bloomer. Once I realized I'd like to partake in the American dream, whatever that looked like for us, it doesn't look the same for everyone. I realized it wasn't happening for me in California, where it seemed like the only young families I knew who could afford to buy a home had parents who could give them $250,000 to even get into their starter home. So we left. And this is the other great thing about America. You have mobility. And I moved to Texas. And even here, I couldn't afford to be as close to the city, Austin, as I'd like to be for comedy and podcasting, but at least the homes were somewhat within my reach. And because I'm a grown up, I accepted the trade offs of a long commute for a small piece of land, a very, very small piece. But it's Texas, and property taxes are nuts. And they go up every year, as well as our insurance, as well as our utilities, as well as our Netflix and HBO. Everything is going up, making it even harder to save and even harder to envision getting closer to the city. but at least we have our home and I love it and I get to love it because it's mine. We planted trees and have a garden. And my wish for everyone in America is that they get to experience their version of upward mobility in America. And a growing number of people feel like this is not the story for them. They still live with their parents. So many young people. They might go down as the first generation to be worse off than their parents. And they're angry, rightfully. I get it. Every generation has had one problem, either high rates or high prices when it comes to housing. Young adults today have both. On top of that, 25 million young Americans are paralyzed by student loan debt. You can't buy a house if you're buried under college loans. And the government has become the biggest predatory lender in America, something Carol Roth has written a lot about and we will talk about tonight. And the Fed spent 15 years holding rates down, inflating prices, and now rates are high and no one can move. Homeowners won't sell because why would they? There's a million memes about this too. Buyers can't buy. Taxes and insurance eat up a third of most mortgage payments, half in some cases. You don't really own your home, you see, you rent it from the government. And then people have to compete with Blackstone. Nearly 27% of single family homes bought this year went to investors. Before 2010, that number was near zero. Honestly, it pisses me off and I think it should be illegal, and I don't even know how it is. Wall Street gets cheap capital, buys home in bulk, and rents them back to the middle class. And if that weren't bad enough, this strategy is pushed and supported by the World Economic Forum, which is pretty much the New World Order. And they're on a mission to completely get rid of private property. You will own nothing, as was the title of Carol Roth's brilliant book. I know it's bleak. In order to buy a house, you have to compete with the US government, Wall Street, and the global elites. It's not, it feels frustrating, but I don't want to be a doomer and I don't feel entitled to anything. And I really like to talk solutions, which is why my guest tonight is the brilliant author Carol Roth. Carol got her start on Wall Street. She likes to joke that she's an investment banker in recovery. She used to help big companies get bigger, and now she fights for the little guys like me, entrepreneurs, and little guys like you, small business owners and homeowners. She recently wrote a great article for Fox News titled 5 Ways the Trump Administration Can Save the American Dream and Prevent Socialism. Check it out if you haven't already. We will link it in the description to this video. And like a lot of what Carol says, it's terrifying, but brilliant and weirdly hopeful if people would ever take her freaking advice. So we will get into it with Carol. We want to hear from you. I know you guys have a lot of thoughts and questions. Carol is an endless resource. She's done so much research about this. So if you do have questions about this, come in, ask us. We really want to hear from you on this. I know this is something that so many people feel a lot of feelings about. But first, some quick housekeeping. If you want to be called on, you need to be on Zoom on camera and you need to virtually raise your hand by clicking the reactions button. If you aren't on Zoom and you want to be part of our virtual live audience right now or in the future, click the link in the description below to get the Zoom link below or go to tway.tv/Bridget Zoom. The Zoom link is the same link every time. It's your virtual diner. So save it somewhere. Come see us when you have time. We love to interact with you and get to know you. The voice of God you're hearing is cousin Maggie. Many of you already know her.
Hello, everyone.
She is my cousin, co-producer. We make a lot of other stuff together. Some might say too much, like our shows Dumpster Fire and Walk-ins Welcome and all the other content you can find at Phetasy.com. Please go become a supporter of this independent record label that is putting out all this content. Maggie will be monitoring the chat. If you have something to say and you raise your hand, Maggie will message you in privately. Find out what you'd like to talk about. She's going to help make sure we stay on topic. We can't guarantee we'll get to everybody, but we do our best. Try and raise your hand earlier too, because you all raise your hands at the end and then we run out of time. So don't be shy. Everyone knows my number one rule. Don't be a dick. So please, don't be a dick and everything will be fine. Treat one another the way you'd want to be treated. Act like you're saying something to somebody in person and they can punch you in the face. And now a word from our sponsor, Quest. I love Quest. I'm trying to make my health a priority, and that's why I adore this company. Quest simplifies the medical testing process significantly, especially if you're dealing with an HMO like I am. And it's not great. No more waiting weeks for an appointment to see my doctor and then getting a referral, waiting weeks more for an appointment with the specialist I need to see. Quest offers over 150 of the same tests trusted by doctors, including diagnostics for very specific ailments like STDs, chronic conditions like heart, liver, kidney disease, as well as testing that is almost never covered by health insurance like fertility and advanced women's hormone testing in case you're perimenopause, like yours truly. Quest also offers broad packages of tests that go way beyond the standard tests you typically get in an annual medical checkup visit. Concierge medicine and functional medicine doctors like acupuncture charge thousands of dollars for these types of workups. Quest offers them for the price of a night on the town. Your health and well being is worth it. Visit questhealth.com and use the discount code REALMAY25 and get 20% off your purchase. That's questhealth.com, code REALMAY25 for 20% off. Thank you to Quest for sponsoring this show. And let's get into it. Let's have our guest, Carol Roth. Carol, welcome to Real America.
Well, thank you, Bridget. I'm so excited because I feel like this is the trifecta. I have been on Walk in Welcome. I've been on Dumpster Fire, and I have never been on Real America. In fact, I've been spending far too much time in fake America. So I'm super excited to be here with you. And I have to say, listening to your monologue, I'm like a proud mama bear. I feel like I've taught you so much. I'm hearing you spill out the stats and the issues and know the difference between Blackstone and BlackRock. And like, I feel like I've just taught you so well.
You've taught me so well. I love your books. I think it's this issue in particular. I was joking the other day because I saw these protesters and they were standing in front of, it was BlackRock, I think, in New York City, and it was like a free Palestine protest, but they were breaking a lot of stuff, and then they started protesting there, and I was like, just fix the housing. They'll be too busy getting mulch for their yard to be like burning shit down. These people are too old to be doing this. And I think a lot of this kind of angst that you're seeing, I mean, all over the world, Gen Z is literally revolting in like other countries and has overturned their government. But so many young people are feeling that frustration of, boomers kind of hanging on to wealth and power, but also just not feeling like they have access to the American dream in this instance in particular that so many people who went before them were able to attain. And I know you've written and thought a lot about this, and it's, housing. We could talk about a lot, zoom out a lot of bigger picture things, but I think housing is something that's so specific. We can really look at it from this point of view, and it is this aspect that is so representative of upward mobility.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real reason. The reason we call it the American dream is because it represents financial freedom and sovereignty for so many people. I don't think that most people understand that the home is the largest asset on Americans' balance sheets across demographics. And the reason is usually that you're forced when you get into a house, you're usually there, you make a commitment, and you're kind of forced to build that equity there instead of, oh, I saw something on Zillow that the prices are slightly down. I'm going to sell out of my house and go buy another one like you do with stocks. So you're almost forced into building wealth. And so over time, that has really been a big wealth driver. And certainly in recent years, with, thanks or no thanks, depending on if you're an asset holder or not, the government and Fed policy that has continued to increase. But there's also, and I think it was maybe RJ that I saw coming across the chats who said this, there's something about sovereignty too. Certainly, you still, if you have a housing association or a county you live in, there's still rules and you still have property taxes, but there's much more freedom in owning your own place and doing what you want under your own roof than if you're a renter. If they decide they don't want you to have firearms or they don't like something that you posted on social media or, whatever it is, there's a lot less freedom when somebody else actually owns the place where you live. So that there's a real reason why this concept of the American dream is tied in. And, it's very frustrating and it's hard to have everybody moving in the same direction when you have a very large group of people for good reason, valid reasons, feeling like that dream is out of reach for them. And I think that's really the crux of what it is that we need to fix. It may not always be that way, but all the confluence of events, many of which that you talked about in the beginning of this show, really has created that situation.
Yeah, I have many minds about this. I mean, I do wonder because the boomers do hold a lot of wealth. When you look at
Yes.
those numbers and people who are not able to have access to the kind of resources they need right now, it may be trickling
Mhm.
down depending on the situation. There could be a large amount of wealth that suddenly comes down to generations, um, Gen X and millennials, and maybe that will lift everybody up.
Or
It
just
just
housing stock that frees up, but that
right,
could be 15 or 20 years from now, and
right.
that does you no good if you're looking to buy a house today or next year.
And they're already put in their third, millennials they're already like that statistic about it being 50, you being 56 is insane. Insane. That is that how and then they wonder about like there's so much of a trickle down effect from this, and this is why I mentioned that I never even really thought about having a house until I had a family, but people who want to start families, they want to put roots down. They
Yeah.
want to this is something that I did. I've been a renter my whole entire life. And when we moved in here, the first thing we did was plant trees because for many reasons, I love trees, but
Yeah.
also increases the value of your home. They're the first ones to sell if you want to move, all these other reasons. And I wanted to physically represent putting down
It's
roots.
yeah, symbolic. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was, and it's been like the amount of time that I spend obsessing about these frickin' trees is not healthy, but I do think it takes my attention away from all these other more trivial things that would otherwise occupy my brain. But there's also something about like having pride, just being able to be proud. The joy I get from driving around my neighborhood and seeing how much care people put into
Yeah.
their gardens, their homes, and that is not something I felt when I was renting at all.
Well,
I
it's
didn't feel
it's
like I
true.
could put a
It's
garden, I couldn't plant trees. Why would I if I was going to move?
That
There
that's
was a
that's
sense
it.
of
You don't
like,
have yeah, they don't have the ownership. That's a real thing. They've done studies on this and it makes sense. It's the same way you might treat a rental car versus one that you own yourself. If you own something and it's your money and your investment, you're going to have that pride to take care of it, to make those investments. You're going to want to keep the neighborhood safe. Like you are incented, the incentives are aligned. If you're not renting and it's not your place, you feel like you can trash it or do whatever it is because it's not yours, it's not your investment, you can leave, you can move. And so there's a reason why neighborhoods where there are people who have ownership tend to be more robust and successful and have bigger returns than those when you have just renters.
yeah, and I mean, so much of this is also just like the cost of living, and I mean, I worry about everything because there are so many influences at play here. One of the things another influence that I think that's at play that I don't feel like it's discussed that much. I see it a lot online, but people will say, "Oh, homeownership is for suckers, actually. You're a sucker for taking that down payment and putting it into a home because you could put it into the stock market and look at how much it would have increased over X amount of years." And what are your thoughts on this? I see this a lot in kind of like the tech bro space.
Okay, so aside from that sovereignty piece that we already discussed, I believe in something called behavioral finance, and I believe that behavioral finance trumps theoretical finance. Theoretical finance is I can take a bunch of different scenarios on paper and come up with something that's going to give you the biggest rate of return. But if you're not going to do it, it's sort of irrelevant. So the people who talk about the house, which is both an asset and a consumable. This is where you're going to spend a lot of time and going to live your life, and you need to have a shelter. So either you're going to be putting it towards something you own or towards something somebody else owns. Even if there is a differential there, are you going to have the discipline to put that into another investment? Or are you going to go, oh, I have all this money a month. I'm going to go on a great vacation or, buy dinner, or I don't even know what to do with the market. And then you're assuming that the market is going to continue to return in the same way that it has in the past. So I go back to where I started with opening this. The home is the biggest asset on most Americans' balance sheets because you are forced, it's forced disciplined for you to make that investment. So,
Mhm.
in theory, there may be a better use of your capital that you can, after tax, and by the way, taxes and how much you put into your house, and there are so many different variables you would have to model out in order to make it an apples to apples comparison. So if you could even do that, then do you have the discipline to make those investments and know how to do it? And then after your fees with your brokerage firm or whatever, like, what does that end up looking like? And so the behavior is much more important to me, and that discipline of you actually doing it, than the theory of, oh, maybe I might figure out how to do this and I get a slightly better return. And I still don't own that at the end of the day. And the other issue is all of these investments we're talking about today we're using our dollars to pay for them. And in dollar terms, they may be appreciating in value, but the dollar itself is depreciating in value. So
Right.
we still may not be keeping pace. So there are all of these different considerations. And so I'm a simplistic person. If you are going to do this and it's going to force you to do it, and you're going to build the equity that way, why wouldn't you just take that bird in the hand? Why wouldn't you take that thing that you're going to do?
Yeah, that is there's so many. I remember just like it's so much rich dad, poor dad stuff too. If you didn't grow up with a good dad who taught you about money and versus poor, I saved so much money and it was like the most money I ever had. And I was saving, little did I know for a down, but I think part of me knew that. And then to like fork that over, I was like, I just lost it. And my very wealthy friend was like, no, Bridget, this is an asset transfer. And like once I had that in my brain, it made it so much easier. But it's so like I didn't grow up with a lot. I don't think a lot of people grow up with like a lot of training around finances at
It's
all,
so it's so
actually.
funny. I had the poor dad who understood how to think like a rich dad. So it didn't work out so well for him, but he passed it along to me. So God bless Bernie. He did not get to enjoy the fruits of it, but he certainly passed it along.
One more thing I want to talk about, and then we'll jump on because we have four hands up. I want to talk about too, like one of the things I kind of like. I understand why the younger generation is furious and
Yeah.
feeling frustrated, but on the other hand, part of the reason that I couldn't get into a house was a lot of choices that I was making personally. And
Yeah.
once I changed my habits and changed my life, things got better and then suddenly things were accessible to me that were not. I'm not suggesting that's what's going on here. There is a system that is not working for all of these young people. But there is this weird sense of entitlement that always rubs me the wrong way because I never felt like I was owed a house. I didn't feel like America owed me a house because it was the American dream. And so I wrestle with these two feelings of very much like, okay, well, here are the cards you're dealt. You still live in some of the best times ever. Try and figure out what you can do. By the way, you don't have to live in Los Angeles. You could go get a very nice house in Ohio, probably right now if you wanted one. And a lot of it is just trade offs. As I mentioned, I didn't move to my dream home in West Hills, Austin. I drive 40 minutes to go do
Yep.
like 10 minutes of comedy often. And that was a trade off that I knew I was making. So, how much of this is real, valid grievance, and how much of it is a generation that kind of feels entitled to all of these things without necessarily making any sacrifices or trade offs or even working for it?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing in so many discussions that we have around finance and other things, both things can be true. And I think in this particular case, both things can be true. The concerns that young people have are entirely valid. The Fed and monetary policy did create a scenario where not only are the housing prices inflated, but now we have higher interest rates on that, and it's made it very unaffordable. Policies let a lot of illegal aliens into the country, which has put a strain on housing, particularly after the crash when they underbuilt housing. And the reality is we probably are still underbuilt by millions of units. As you said, the government is the largest predatory lender in the world, that they are saying, hey, kids who are still teenagers, let's saddle you with debt that's not going to provide a return on investment, and we're going to transfer wealth from you to college administrators. And if you're saddled with that debt, you can't even think about owning a house. And even if you're getting out of it, then you just got that debt behind you and now you're onto something else. These are all real issues. But there are other issues. There are things that are not their fault, but are realities, such as the size of houses. If you go back, I was here about the 1950s. In the 1950s, the average house and the median house was under 1,000 square feet.
Crazy.
Now that's like 2,400 square feet.
Hmm.
So obviously, if you're looking at those bigger houses, it's going to cost you more. We still need incentives to drive the building of lower houses or smaller houses, because as you know, from an incentive standpoint, if you can just build the bigger house and it's less work, you can make more money as a builder. Why would you build these smaller houses?
Right.
So it would be good to get some incentives. So there's some of that. And then there's also just some life choices. I know when I was growing up, my dad was an electrician. He never went to college. We kind of overextended ourselves into a house so that we could live in a nice neighborhood. But that meant we didn't do anything else. Like, I never went on a vacation when we were little. I think when I was in high school, we finally went from the Chicagoland area up to like a little resort in Wisconsin for like 2 or 3 days. Like, that was like a big thing. My parents never bought new cars. We certainly didn't DoorDash our food. My mom was
Right.
cooking every single day. And so there are these small steps, but there's also okay, well, if I skip the Starbucks every day, I still can't afford the house
Right.
reality, or I'm still saddled with debt. So I think that there are personal choices that can be made. I'm a very, very big fan of having a period of austerity and just insane work to get your financial position in order so that you can have less stress for a longer period of time. And I don't think that that is in the zeitgeist right now. I think a lot
Yeah.
of balance is, which means that you're going to have that stress and maybe that debt for a longer period of time. So we do have real problems to fix. And we also probably have some messaging and teaching to do, better financial skills, and more of, you can't just do this. You need to actually work for it and make sacrifices. And, putting that together creates a good outcome. But right now we don't have either of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to some of the hands raised and take their questions and thoughts.
All right.
Awesome.
First, I'm going to bring up John Mark. Go.
Hello.
Why, hello. Good afternoon, Bridget, and good afternoon, Carol, Maggie, and everybody on. Thank you for having me on again.
Of course. You got that
Um,
radio voice.
I was just about to say, what a fabulous voice
I
you
know.
have.
We always tell him you should do voiceover work.
He should.
I'm open to it. Get somebody my email address.
Okay, good. Yeah. Get it.
So I have some notes here, so I apologize if I'm glancing off screen at my other screen here, but I wanted to come prepared. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, and Carol mentioned it, a lot of the disenfranchisement of the Gen Z and what will inevitably be Gen Alpha is, I feel, through this broken social contract, right? So we have it even written into our Declaration of Independence, in that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, that last bit, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, was taken from John Locke. And his quote is that it was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property.
Property.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the important distinction here being written during the Enlightenment when Locke did, nobility and were the exclusive owners of land. This was post-feudalism, but still your independent gentry could not own land. And it is the single most secure way for somebody to start, as you said, Carol, building wealth and
Mhm.
building stability. So when that part of the contract is broken and young people see it, well, I've got no way to create a safety net for myself, the rest of the links in the chain start to fall apart. So you're less likely to have young people having kids, right? You're less likely to have young people aspiring to move or aspiring to participate in society based off this one linchpin of just being able to have that security net.
Yeah.
And part of how we got here, right? I don't think anybody truly believes that the government owes them a house, but I do think that we have this feeling of we are governed by consent. And we have a government that at present is more focused on representing corporations that are allowed to swoop up and buy these single family homes. Or when I was coming up, I used to work construction before I served in the military. And this was prior to the market crash. You would have Del Webb, Beecher Homes building these massive, massive housing developments in West Glendale and buying up farmland on the cheap, developing them, and then they would set a comp for the area. So they would sell 3 or 4 homes in this community to a subsidiary to set the price for this, right? So they basically set their own prices in the area by creating a bubble. And this is what
Wow.
eventually fed into, part of the reason the bubble burst and the artificial inflation of the housing market in the early 2000s. Um, and it's created this system, and when you couple that with mortgage-backed securities being traded on the market, there's more value in those homes being higher value to have a higher ROI for the investors that have these MBSs in their portfolio. That for the advantage of the people that are able to trade in the stock market, it's great. But
Mhm.
for your average young
Yeah.
person coming out with college debt, living in an area, well, let's say, somebody goes to college up here in Washington where I live now. Um, there's not a lot of jobs outside of the tech sector, and
Yeah.
AI is taking away a lot of those lower early entry computer science degrees. So you brought up the point, okay, we'll move to Ohio. Cool. What kind of job can I get there? Is it going to be able to cover my baseline and cover the now 30% of my income that is required for rent alone? Not even
Yeah.
talking about owning a home, right? Whereas in 1990, when my parents bought their first home, it was 11%.
Yeah.
And like you, Bridget, my parents did that, pull themselves up by their bootstraps in 1990. They were knuckleheaded hippies, running around causing mischief, whatever, and didn't get their, I like to say, didn't get their shit in one sock until, 1990-ish, but were able to save, get a down
Yeah.
payment, buy a home because it was still only 11% of their income, whereas now it's tripled.
Yeah.
So what I see, unless this problem is addressed and we quit lumping the responsibility entirely on, a generation saying that, you guys just don't want to work hard enough. You guys just need to pull yourself up by your
Yeah.
bootstraps. Before when we start to acknowledge that the system is built and rigged against them, we're going to have an even deeper problem when Gen Alpha comes of
Yeah.
age.
There's
Yeah.
I'm
actually
looking at,
there's a
go ahead.
phrase, John Mark, if you don't mind, that
Sure.
that I've been talking about for a long time, and I think people have started taking it on. But it's called a K-shaped economy. And
Mm,
if you think about the letter K, right, you've got a bunch of
Like,
people who are up and to the right. They're doing really well. They're the asset holders, and then
mhm.
you have the rest of the country that is down. And those people are the ones who aren't participating in the wealth. And that K just keeps, going on and going on. And that is not, as you said, a very healthy thing, which I do think is why it's important for things like addressing college loans and putting these young kids in so much debt, which has been, by the way, entirely the fault of the US government's involvement. But getting involved in that, creating incentives. One of the things I brought up in the article that Bridget talked about is that less than 25% of all loans right now on mortgage loans are assumable. If the
Mm,
government could get involved and make more loans assumable, all the people who refinanced at 2 and 2.5% rates, somebody could come in, and if you let the bank do that, but then have a right of first refusal on the origination of the balance, Then maybe on a blended basis, it's a little bit higher. They get their origination fees, but that would bring down that rate and it would open up so many more people to participate and really kind of unlock the market. Things at the local level, we need more people to get involved because property taxes, even if you can get into a house, property taxes are just absolutely out of control. And
It's
so, you know,
crazy.
there are things that we need to be doing to fix whatever element of a social contract we do have so that there is that opportunity, the incentives to build smaller houses, the things that are going to allow somebody to participate in the American dream. And maybe they do need to make a sacrifice to do it, but at least we can point to them and say, if you may not be able to do it in New York City, but if you go to
Right.
Ohio, it's still only going to be 15 or 20% of your income.
I do feel
Right.
like that is a good point as well. Like that people don't feel like people feel like they are making sacrifices and no one's making good on that deal. So people already are. I don't even know what jobs are going to be. Like,
Right.
what are people going to do? Even today, Amazon mentioned that they were laying off like 600,000 workers because, of course, they are. But it's something like, yeah, we all knew robots are going to be packing these boxes, and they were like, no, no, don't worry. And so I don't really know. Like you said, what would their job be in Ohio? I don't know.
Right.
Maybe
And
maybe like go into a trade for the next 10 years that the robots aren't doing that.
but you need to have homeowners in order to have people go into that trade,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
residential plumbing, residential electricity, so forth.
I mean,
The
look, I'm just thinking like what would be good in the bunker? You're
two,
gonna need to know how to
A,
weld.
a lock
right.
fixer.
Two quick points, if I
Locksmith.
could, if you don't mind. I think, and I had this thought a while ago, that the greatest con pulled on the working class is that the wealthy, it's not in their best interest to have the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, right? So you brought up property taxes. A lot of that, especially here, like in Washington State, a lot of that can be fixed by, various forms of taxes that will affect these multi-billion-dollar companies that we have. We have Blue Origin, we have Amazon, we have Oracle, we have Microsoft, and yet your average homeowner, your middle class working stiff, and being squeezed to death on my local taxes. And it's making me frustrated at the school that my kids are going to, which that doesn't seem fair, right? When there's an
Can
abundance
I
of
jump
wealth.
in on that point
Yes,
before you get into your second point? So
sure.
that isn't the obvious way to look at it. But the reality of it is that if you didn't have Blue Origin there and they moved somewhere else, you wouldn't have as much money and as much jobs. I would offer that the issue is that these entities are getting so much money already and they are just not using it effectively and efficiently. I cannot think about any level of government that I've ever come across where the problem is actually that they're not collecting enough money. They have plenty of revenue. They have just overspent. They have not been on a budget. They have not been held to account. So the logical thing to say is, well, I'm getting squeezed and they're getting a pass. Everybody should get a pass. There should be less money going to the government, and there should be a different way to part and parcel it. Because if you just try to put it on the Blue Origins of the world, they're going to, pick up and they're going to go to Florida. And
But
Florida's been
even
able to figure this out. So I think that you have to balance and you have to look at how much money is going to state, to local, and to federal government. And that is really the crux of the issue that's keeping people, instead of really the division of where it's coming from.
I don't disagree with that. And I think it's
Yeah.
a little bit of both, column A and column B, right?
Okay, sorry,
Because
I do have to cut in here.
Okay.
It's a great conversation, but we have a bunch of other hands, and I do want to make sure we get to some other people.
okay,
Fair enough.
wait, I
Thank you
want
for-
him to finish his second
Okay,
point
yes.
though.
Okay, yes, please.
Final point, as quick as I can. I've adjusted my thinking. I've got two young kids, a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. Generational housing is the way I have to look at it, right?
Yeah.
So the plan is building a farmstead and having a place where I can, with my own two hands, build them little one-bedroom cottages.
This is what I'm all
Love
about.
it.
Like, I want to do this. I keep talking to my in-laws about this. I'm like,
Love it.
I love generational housing. I'm all in on like
The
multiple
compound for the-
families on a
yeah,
compound.
The compound
Yeah.
Just
for,
not in the
for
main
everyone
house.
else, right? For the middle class.
Get in your own little house, not in the main house. You guys can.
Look,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Not in the main house. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for your thoughts.
Thank
Good
you,
to
John
see
Mark.
you.
All right.
And he could always record. I mean, AI is gonna just fuck everything up. It's so crazy.
All right, I'm bringing up you, Kelly.
We should have a whole other
And I just
discussion on
asked you
that
to
because there's
unmute.
so many things to think about there.
I know. I would love to have. Well, we had such a big discussion, and I actually would love to have you back because it was so busy and so many people came and so many hands were raised. We said we were going to do a part 2, and I'm like, we really should just do one a month because I don't know that people you can even talk
Yeah.
about it enough. And I again, I see like these companies are like, oh, the jobs are here and they keep money and they keep people here, but like they're not keeping their contract either. If they're going to outsource all of their jobs to AI, that doesn't seem
Everyone's going to be working for small businesses. It's going to be the backbone of America because the small businesses aren't going to replace it. But we're getting on. We need Kelly.
everyone's
We
going to
need
be
to talk to
working
Kelly.
for me. I do. I keep absorbing people who like get them laid off from AI. I can't. It's like crazy. All right. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Bridget.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Um, it's funny. You guys keep mentioning Ohio. I live in Ohio.
I know you do. When you logged in, I was like, oh, Ohio's in the chat.
How are you?
We're
How are you
good.
doing? Good. It's good to see you. I we own our own home. It's just that my husband and I, when I met him, he had his house. So I wasn't able to go and search for a home and pick one out and get what I wanted. So we were like, okay, we'll just do upgrades and fix what we don't like and things he can't fix, or maybe my master bedroom's on the second floor. I never wanted that. So um, it's just that, you know, my husband and I have prioritized things like life insurance and 401k, and my husband really likes to travel, so we kind of did that instead. And so we haven't really updated, and this house has kind of been like this since 1984 when it was built. So, and I am in my bedroom, so I know Bridget's seen this before and Maggie's seen this before, but my ceiling has birdhouses that were stenciled across the top in about 1985. So
So cool.
we I don't like them, but they've been here for a long, long time. So it's just one of the examples of why the updates we haven't been able to do. And that's just been really frustrating over the years. We just and behind this wall is actually in a giant space that could be my closet if we could actually afford to do it. So that's pretty much what I was going to talk about. We've just been having, everything just keeps getting more and more expensive
Yeah.
to buy, to renovate, and to change things is just getting more and more expensive. And we've talked about moving, but my parents just bought a house and they have a much smaller house than we do. And it costs $300,000. And our house is about the same amount worth that. So, and you know, being in Ohio, it doesn't seem like a lot, but in Ohio, that's actually a pretty pretty higher end. So
I
we're
mean,
just
Kelly, what I would say, first of all, I think the birdhouses are cool. And I think that you should look at them and they can symbolize different things to you. One, they can symbolize the consistency of your investment. Another thing is it's a window into the travels that you've decided to take. And you say, I'm going to love these birdhouses and I'm going to also have these experiences. And that's, I mean, I think it's a perfect example of, you know, we don't get everything. We have choices and trade-offs to make. And so maybe one year you decide you don't go to Europe or you don't do whatever, and you take that money and you do your closet. Or if not, and you say, we value this more, that's okay too. But you still have the house and it's okay. I mean, the 80s are coming back again, right? It's retro cool. I mean, I've got like the weird wallpaper behind me too. And I love it. And I think a lot of it is just perspective. You know, you can decide that this is a burden and something that makes you unhappy, or you could go, how cool is this? this reminds me of when, we first moved in here, and now I've got a house that's worth $300,000, and we've invested in it, and we've been able to travel. And that's an amazing thing. So, I think sometimes it's just a question of perspectives and what's the most important thing to you. And you can't make two things your number one priority. And so you've chosen in those different moments the most important thing to you. And I think that's a sign of a life well lived.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, Max, I'm going to bring you up next.
Hey, Max.
Oh, wait, there we go.
Hello.
Welcome back.
What's up? I was gonna say I own my own house, which is great. But I wanted
Are
to,
you Gen Z?
I'm millennial.
Millennial.
Yeah. Um, but I was gonna ask, maybe you can answer this, Carol. I never understood why like the rental price always goes up every year. Because that's the main reason why I bought my house. Because
Because
the
it
rental
can,
prices kept.
because it can, Max. Because it
Yeah, that's what I
can.
don't.
Because
That's what I
because
hate.
the demand for the housing outpaces the supply. And when you have the demand for something outpace the supply, it can. I remember when I first started out my career, I lived in San Francisco, and I kid you not, I lived in a 400 square foot studio that my then fiance, now husband of 26 years, moved into. So you had two of us in a studio that was 400 square feet. My bedside table was a cardboard box with a
Oh
sheet
my
over
gosh.
it. I lived in this for 4 years. And when I left that in 2000, they rented, I was paying like $800 a month, which, back in 95, seemed outrageous. When I left in 2000, they started charging $1,700
Yeah.
a month.
Yeah.
And today it's probably $4,000. And they do it because they can. If they couldn't have, they did not have somebody else who wanted to move into that. If there was enough supply, and you see this in certain areas where there's a lot of supply,
Austin.
they can't do it. But if the supply and demand gets out of whack, and they have the demand, they're going to raise the price because they can. And by the way, it's
Yeah.
not just being greedy. Their property taxes are going up. Their maintenance is going up. There are increasing costs too that they want to be able to pass along and not have to
Yeah, so
absorb. But at the end of the day, if
yeah.
they couldn't do it, they wouldn't do it.
Austin
Yeah.
rents are going down. They're a good example of someone who they like loosened things up and they built more housing, and now people are getting actual rate reductions on their rent. And I have a lot of friends who their rents have gone down in the past couple of years because they were having such a boom and they caught up, and now there's a surplus.
Yeah, I guess the next question is how much of is it the government's fault for the
As
rent
always.
prices
It's
going
always
up?
the government. So it's always the government's fault. So
Because I think I feel like liberals are blaming the wrong people. They want to blame like the owners of the property, but it's like no, it's probably taxes or something
yeah,
stupid.
this is a tale as old as time. So this, in many cases, is the local government's fault because they have all the different zoning laws and rules and costs and regulations that, if you strip those away, would make it much easier and more affordable to build. So that's part of the issues. The property tax piece, as we talked about, they continue. I don't know any jurisdictions that continually lower property taxes, or that I'm still trying to find that one. But yes, I think that there's a lot of restrictions. I did in I think it was my last book, but maybe it was the 2 books ago, I can't remember. But one of the two of those, the National Association of Home Builders said that at that point in time, into the cost of every average new build, it was almost $100,000 that was attributable to regulation. Now, granted, some of those we need. We don't want electricians that catch your house on fire because they did a shoddy job. There are things, but it certainly isn't $100,000 that we all need in terms of regulations. So, to the extent that we could have a more open market and there could be more building. But the pushback on that is the people who own the houses don't want that to happen, because if they had that free market, the value of their house that they bought into would go down. So it becomes a very difficult sell when you say, hey, well, we need to help everybody else out, when then it impacts something that's your wealth. You only want to see that happen for other people, just not for you. So that becomes part of the challenge. But the government certainly plays a very big piece in this. And then we didn't even get into sort of the overarching Fed and government policy of the last 15 years that added to the inflation of assets. But all of those things together are a big part of it. Everybody's greedy. It's not a bad thing. It's a normal thing. It's just a question of how that works within sort of the scope and context of everything else.
Yeah. The other thing I like about, well, you talked about earlier how the younger generation doesn't really like to work for things. And I think that's true because I moved back in with my parents for a year and I saved up 10,000 for my first down, But I explained to my friends and like my brother, I was like, well, that year that I was living with my parents, I did absolutely nothing.
Right.
Like I did nothing. It was like the most boring year of my life.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah,
The
'cause I had to
marshmallow test
save
from
up the money.
Stanford. Biggest predictor of financial success is delayed gratification. The longer you can put off that initial gratification, you can build that nest egg. And Max, my dad did the same thing many, many years ago. He lived with his mother till he was 36, which back in the 60s and 70s, that was crazy. So he could save up enough to be able to buy that nice house for him. And, the longer you can delay, the more financial success you're going to have.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Max. We've
Yep.
got two more hands.
One more thing.
Yep.
I did listen to your audiobook. What was it? The You Will Own Nothing and Be Happy.
You own nothing.
You will not be
Or
happy.
You
You
Will
will
Own
just own
Nothing and You'll
nothing.
Be
Yes.
Happy. Yeah. That was a good book.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right.
That was a terrifying book. What are you talking
Thanks.
about?
All right, we've got two more hands. I want to make sure we try and get to everyone. So I'm going to bring up Micah Siegel. And there we go.
He's been having, his comments have been on fire.
He's so
Liking-
smart.
Thank you.
Like, this comment,
Wow.
like,
So
yes,
smart.
yes, absolutely.
Wow,
He had
thank
some
you.
good
I-
pushback a couple weeks ago.
I'm blushing. I appreciate it. I'm very bad with compliments. Well, I was just thinking how everything Carol was saying resonated so much. So it worked well. But yeah, I say what I honestly think. So it was all in the same vein.
Appreciate it.
I think the homeownership question in general is just, it's a bit complex. I think Bridget was talking about this before, that a lot of it is like real issues and a lot of it is complaining. I remember my brother would complain about how hard everything is. He was living at my parents' house. He had an engineering job and it wasn't paying him enough. I was like, we grew up in the same house. We had the same lessons. I'm not stuck here. So I just think it's like part of it is people complaining. Part of it is it's really expensive and hard, but you also have to just accept reality as it is. We're not changing the system tomorrow, and there are solutions, and people can figure things out. If you have a remote job, you definitely don't have to live near a big city. The other 75% who don't, they got to figure something else out. But there are kind of options, and throwing up your hands doesn't work out so well. And I see a lot of my peers make a lot more money than me, but are much worse with handling money. And that's very common. So I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, and I think not only, so there's two sides. There's the people who make more money, aren't good at handling it. And then there are people who don't realize like where you can go to make money. I've had people that come to me are struggling and they're making, $40,000 or $60,000 a year. And I'm like, do you know that you can go and be a manager at, these certain Taco Bells or certain Costco's and places like that and make six figures a year. And it
Yeah.
just floored people. And for other people who've gone to college or things like that, they feel like that's beneath them because they have an education. It's not beneath you. It's an opportunity to go make $100,000 a year and get in a management track, and maybe you can make even more. So sometimes it's just getting out of your own way. And whether that's on the revenue side or the spending side, I think that's hard for people who are on a path or have been told that it needs to be a certain way, and that path doesn't work for them, but it doesn't mean that a different path isn't available to them.
Yeah, there's a lot of cookie cutter hats, and there's so many opportunities. Nobody finds out about them.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You can
Yeah,
take out an SBA loan, get a small business tomorrow if you wanted to. It's like I found
You
that
don't
out a
even
few
need a
years
loan. You can
ago.
start a dog washing or dog walking
Yeah, you don't
service
even
with
need an
almost no
LLC. Let's
capital
go for
tomorrow.
it.
Hire a
I
bunch of
see
kids.
this.
Yeah.
I see this truck in my neighborhood. This is when I'm like, America's doing fine. Like, part of me is like, I don't really know what the economy is at all right
K-shaped. It's
now.
K-shaped. Some
It's
of the people are doing
weird.
amazing, and some of the people are struggling to even get food. It's
You
crazy.
saw the AWS outage and people were all complaining about their beds that like fritzed out. And I was like, how many people have these ridiculous beds that are like connected to the internet and warm their bed up? Way more than I thought. And then I was driving through a neighborhood the other day and it was like one of these trucks and it's like, we come pick up your dog poop from your backyard. I'm like, how fucking lazy are you that you have
Very.
someone coming and picking?
By the
But
way,
that's
if
a
you're gonna
service
start a business, start it for wealthy people because they're
with
going to continue
pets.
to be wealthy and they're super freaking lazy and they
So
aren't
lazy.
very press sensitive. So go do something that like preys on that laziness and makes their life easier. It's like the one place I would tell people definitely start a business.
It's probably
That
half the
segment of the
economy,
economy.
servicing
Yeah.
that piece.
All right. Thank you, Micah.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
to see
guys.
you.
All right. And now I'm going to bring up Misha. I hope I'm saying
My
that
sister's
correctly.
an organizer, a professional organizer, and it's like insane how much her business has grown outside.
Right.
And
Because
it's literally just
can't even
people
put
who
our
like
we can't
don't
even
want
put
to
our
fucking
shit away
organize their
anymore.
spaces.
we're so messed up as a nation. We need people to help us put stuff on a shelf. That's if there's ever like a metaphor for America, that's it.
Or they just have too much stuff and they don't want to purge it and they just
Yeah.
hire her to come in and purge for them, which
Hi,
I
Misha.
get.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hello. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Hello.
Thank you so much. And yes, Maggie, you said my name correct. It's Misha.
Okay, good.
So I am a Gen X in the mid-50s, rented and currently renting forever. And me and my husband both work full-time jobs, and I also have a part-time job on the weekends. I'm a veterinary technician, so I work in the medical field. And still, more month at the end of our money, even with him working in higher education. So he's also a college professor, teaches music. And I think we're at the point where we just not quite given up, but have just, how is this ever going to happen as far as homeownership? Is that even a possibility at our age? I mean, we're in our mid 50s. Kid is in college. One just got married, and is that even a possibility, or a thought to even entertain at this point? It's really sad and it's really debilitating, in some sense. And, I mean, we honestly just that generational housing thing sounds amazing and sounds like something that, like how would somebody like us even start? I don't even know how all this shit works with the taxes and the loans and the people and the things and the little I don't know how any of that shit works. And hustling with two jobs, having the time to research all that shit is just beyond, even
Yeah.
my ability, my time of the day. I'm exhausted, absolutely exhausted. And
Where do you live, Misha? What part of the
Yeah, I
country?
was just gonna ask you that.
I'm in Texas, so I'm in North Texas.
Okay.
And my husband's from Puerto Rico, and we would, our dream of dreams is to have just a little plot of land where I can have chickens and goats, and have a place where we can bring our kids and, eventually pass that to them. And, it just seems, I'm renting right now and I have a unicorn of a landlord because he allows us to have our pets. I have a lot of pets. And
Did you pay for your kids' college and weddings?
yes,
I mean,
This
we
is
did help finance.
this is where the money went. So that's
your
okay.
pets are also where all your money is
Yes.
going.
They are my investment. Yes, they are.
So I
the-
think
the-
there are
I
a
had
number
one
of
and it
different.
nearly, it literally drained my entire savings trying to save that freaking dog from
That damn
cancer.
dog,
And
yes.
that is such an American.
Yeah, no,
Oh, yeah.
I can feel the frustration and
Yeah.
somebody said the exhaustion, but you paid for the college, you don't have to do that anymore. You paid for the wedding, you don't have to do that. Now it's time to figure out for you. And I wonder
Yeah.
if there's something, and this may be unconventional, but something you and your kids work on together. Maybe there's a way that you guys as a family can put away a little bit of money each month and think about getting something where you own something together to start.
Yeah.
Or at a minimum, you know, you're able, if it doesn't work out for you, at least you feel like you're helping them out. If it's something you want, a little plot of land with some chickens, maybe you just buy the land right
That's
now.
what I was going to say.
Just invest in some land, and then a
Yeah.
little bit later when you feel like you have more breathing room, maybe you can build a little something on it, or even, and nobody put this down, but they, you know, they have these houses, these prefab houses or a trailer or a small thing, and you still own the land underneath it.
Yeah.
So I would get together as a family and come up with a plan, see if there's anywhere from your current, say if there's a vacation, if there's some place you can set, you know, just start setting a little bit aside, see if it's something that your kids want to participate. Hey, we helped you out, we paid for the wedding, we did this, and we'd like to own
Seriously.
something together. Let's get together, let's make a plan. And
Right.
maybe, you know, since you've been so kind and generous in helping them, and they're probably better at using the internet, maybe they can start doing the research.
Yeah.
So, but there's also, you know, reach out to Bridget, reach out to me. We can always, if you have a specific question, you know, there's always people like us or someone around that's willing to help with, you know, that one question to point you in the right direction.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it seems like a big elephant, right? Like, how do I eat the
Yeah.
elephant? You eat the elephant one bite at a time. So just take one small step, start putting a little bit away. Maybe you scout a piece of land somewhere, and that's going to be, you're going to buy the land. And then over time, you know, in your retirement, you're going to find a way. Maybe you know, somebody in your family has friends that you can get together and do a barn raising, and they can help build you something. I mean, there's so way you really need to get creative, but don't be hard on yourself, because the reason you don't have the house because you were so generous to your kids.
Yeah.
So that's
And your
amazing.
pets.
Yes, and your
Yeah.
pets.
Pets
Yeah,
are
all
your
cost a
babies.
fortune.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they cost a fortune. And I was going to say the same thing. Like I there's this great proverb that I have absolutely lived by my entire life. And if you listen to my monologue, by the way, 50s is a first time homeowner now.
I
So
know.
you're right where you should be.
Perfect.
And
Love it.
also there's this proverb, this Estonian proverb that I read years ago, and I live by it. And it's the work will teach you how to do it. Everything you see around me, I didn't know how to do any of it. I didn't know how to start a show. I didn't know how to start a podcast. I didn't know how to get sober. I didn't know how to buy a house. I didn't know how to open my financial kimono in that very uncomfortable way for banks to see all this crap.
Oh, God.
And it's terrifying. But
Mhm.
you just learn how to do it by just taking steps and making mistakes. And Maggie and I have had so many technical things that have happened. And every time it happens, we learn something different. Like, just even though it feels like overwhelming, like Carol said, you just eat that elephant one step at a time. And it's not, you're still young. I have a 98-year-old Holocaust survivor friend, and he is always reminding me that I'm a spring chicken. And he's absolutely right. And we live in a society that's very youth oriented. And I do think families should start thinking about generational living together. Like, I think it is something that moving into whatever unknown future we're moving into, it will just be helpful. But also, like, when you have grandkids and when they're going to inherit the land anyway, it's in their benefit to
Right.
help you in your old age. You can be around the kids when they have grandkids, like if they're going to have kids.
And when you know, Bridget, when you have that goal too, it's so much easier, because
Yeah.
like if you have that piece of land identified and the land is, you know, X dollars, it's going to incentivize you to be like, well, I guess I can just cut back on this restaurant here. We could just cut back, and you start putting, you know, that pot together and you see it grow. You're going to feel gratified, and it's going to make it easier for you to want to continue on. And it's going to seem less exhausting and more like, oh, I'm working for something specific.
Right. Right.
Instead of just this pie in the sky, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another-
Or just like, how am I going to get this home? It's like, we don't, Is this my dream home? No, but it's an amazing home. And my biggest thing that I've been trying to do lately, because there's so much nihilism and doomerism out there, and if you're online all day like I am, that's pretty much all it is. And then I'll see these great tweets from kind of techno optimists because they're in the upward K, the upward part of the K. But they're very much like, you can fly anywhere in the world in 24 hours. You can, this list of things that we can do. There are so many. We were talking right before we came on about hip replacements and how that's so common and easy. We do live in miraculous, amazing times, and I think I know, and I'm only speaking for myself. I will get lost in what I don't have and forget what I do have, and focusing on what I do have and how I can, maybe delay some gratification to get something else I want in this. Like, it's that weird mix of like gratitude and ambition.
Also, stop watching the house porn online, right? Like all of a sudden, like we're in this, like, when I was growing up, we used to just have the one TV show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. You're like, that's like 5 people. But now, like every day you go on Instagram and you see some house that's like worth $60 million. Like, how is this possible? Who's buying these homes? So stop looking at that stuff and just focus on your own goal.
Oh my God. When I was like a poor broke yogi, the only thing I wanted was a little RV. Maggie can vouch for this. All I wanted was an RV on a plot of land in Joshua Tree. That's like all I wanted in life when I was single and nuts. And I'm still nuts. I'm just not single anymore. But I don't know. Like there's a million ways to skin a cat. I hope you don't have a lot of cats, but
a lot of skinning.
Okay, well,
okay, we're gonna put you on a diet. You cannot buy any more cats.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they come to me
Those
free.
cats are the reason you don't have your dream house. I promise.
They're never free. They come to you for free. They cost you a fortune.
That's why I work in veterinary medicine to pay.
Yeah. That's smart, actually. Now I get it. Well, Misha, hang in there. I hope it's don't lose hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, but just put put a plan. The difference between a hope and an idea and an actual goal is making it concrete. So find some time before, the end of November, before Thanksgiving, to sit down and make that decision. This is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to work towards.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Misha.
Thank you.
I think that Carol and I should have just an advice show.
You guys absolutely should. This is amazing.
Carol and I are going to turn this into we'll just be like the female Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla.
You could just give hair care tips and it would be a huge show.
I literally do nothing. That's how I maintain my hair. All right. I think that's it for today, right?
Yes,
yeah. Okay. All right. Carol, tell everyone where we can find you. Tell us about your books and where in your newsletter. You do so much.
I try not to be found, but if you are going to find me, I have a free economic newsletter. So if you want to learn these kinds of concepts and, get yourself, if you want to nerd out, it's carolroth.com/news. I'm across social media at Carol JS Roth. I have a whole slew of books, The Entrepreneur Equation, if you want to be talked out of starting your own business, The War on Small Business, if you still want to be talked out of starting a small business, and You Will Own Nothing, if you want to learn how to fight back against all of these crazy things that are going on with the financial foundation of our country and the world that we've been talking about today.
And you are often on Glenn Beck's show, right?
I'm anywhere where anyone will have me, depending on the day. I was with Glenn about a week ago, so it just depends on
Fox
on the
sometimes.
day.
Yeah,
it depends. I fall in and out of favor. I've been doing this for 15 plus years in the media, so people like me one day, they don't like me.
That's how it
My
is.
booker moves to a different network. I do that network for a while, so whoever invites me. If I like them, I show up, and if I don't, I don't.
Well,
so.
I like
Bridget, I always show up for you.
You'll always have a spot here at Phetasy.com with the rest of the people who AI replaces.
What did we decide I was? I was like your financial guru,
richness advisor.
Oh, your richness advisor. That's right. So,
I mean, you're doing well.
Thanks. I mean, listen, I will have to say, not to pat myself on the back, but the advice I've been giving out for like the last 15 years and particularly for like the last 5, like has been like so spot on. So I feel really good about that.
Yeah, because you're very practical. You look at
Yeah.
things practically.
I'm a realist. I'm a
You are.
realist. Yeah.
You are, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much. I love you and adore
Love you
you,
too.
and everyone should follow you and know who you are.
Yeah, and thanks to you and for introducing me to your great group here. You guys are
Yeah,
so
come on
smart
anytime.
and savvy, and yeah,
Let's
fantastic.
talk AI.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, no, the audience here is so smart. I never get to see the chat. I always feel like I get the worst FOMO because everyone's like, Maggie's over there laughing and like everyone's looking at the chat.
No,
and
the
I'm like,
comments
I'm
they're
left out.
amazing. They're so insightful. So that's rare these days. So kudos, guys.
It would be too distracting for me. I would
Yeah.
just not even be able to function.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
We will wrap out. That was great. You guys are awesome. I love my audience so much. Thank you to my guest, Carol Roth. You can check out her free economic newsletter at carolroth.com/news. Thank you to those of you who showed up and asked questions and made comments and opened up and shared yourself. I know it can be scary and we appreciate you. Thank you to Two Way and their amazing team. Sorry we went over, guys. Thank you, Quest, for sponsoring this show. Visit questhealth.com and use the discount code RealMay25 and get 20% off your purchase. That's questhealth.com, code RealMay25 for 20% off. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Bridget.
Join us next Wednesday, October 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you're with us on Zoom, it's the same link every time. Some of you have been asking about us as a podcast. We should exist as a podcast, and I'm not sure why we don't. And I'm going to get an answer for you. I've received multiple emails. I hear you. We're looking into it because I know there's a lot of other ones on Two Way and they exist as podcasts. So ours should as well. We will get an answer for you for that. That's it. Thanks for getting real with me, guys. I'm Bridget Phetasy. Don't forget to tip your server.